You have the floor, madam.
Mr. President, members of the court, it is a privilege to appear again before you on behalf of South Africa. But it's also tragic that we are back here 4 months after this court first ordered provisional measures in this case against the State of Israel. South Africa is compelled to appear before you with this urgent request for provisional measures in circumstances where the alarm sounded by the court on 28 March 2024 that, quote, all the indicators of genocidal activities are flashing red in Gaza, end quote, and in Rafah in particular, is sounding louder than ever before. This is because Israel has defied every single provisional measure indicated by this court in its orders of 26 January and 28 March, and they are not secure. They are still being subjected to an ongoing and intensifying genocide at the hands of Israel. Their future hangs in the balance. Mr. du Plessis explained in his address the assault unfolding in Rafah, the last area in Gaza in which Palestinian life can meaningfully be sustained. The assault on Rafah, which has triggered this application, is inextricably linked to the ongoing genocidal conduct being committed across Gaza. Mr. President, I place before the court again a map of Gaza. I remind the court that Gaza is a narrow strip of land of approximately 365 square kilometers. It is just 6 kilometers wide. The length from top to bottom is just 44 kilometers, which is about the distance between this court and Schiphol Airport. In South African terms, this is even less than the distance between Johannesburg and Pretoria. Rafah lies in the south of Gaza with an area of approximately 60 square kilometers. This time last year, Rafah was home to around 275,000 Palestinians. As a result of Israel's onslaught and its evacuation orders covering more than 3/4 of Gaza's total territory, 1.2 million additional Palestinians fled into Rafah under order of Israel as a place of last refuge. Now, Israel has issued further evacuation orders directing Palestinians to leave Rafah. In just the past week, 600,000 Palestinians have been forced to flee from Rafah, but with nowhere to go. There is a total collapse of infrastructure, of sanitation, of water, of food supply. In short, the conditions necessary to sustain life for the 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. The picture on the screen shows Palestinians last month starting to return to their homes after Israel's withdrawal of its occupation of Khan Yunis. As we can all see, there is nothing left. Israel's most recent actions in Rafah bring its coordinated plan aimed at the destruction of the essential foundations of Palestinian life in Gaza into horrifying focus. We are in the final stages of that coordinated plan, where the different actions of Israel, to use Lemkin's terminology, the systematic disintegration of the political and social institutions and the economic existence of national groups and the destruction of the personal security, liberty, health, dignity, and even the lives of Palestinians have led to the present precipice. Israel has the power over each and every Palestinian man, woman, and child in Gaza to determine if they live or how they die. History warns us what happens next. We cannot simply stand by waiting for that to happen again. It is not possible to recount every story of every Palestinian who is suffering at the hands of Israel's relentless genocidal campaign. Indeed, this court has held in Bosnian genocide that, quote, "It is sufficient to examine those facts that would illuminate the question of intent or illustrate the claim by the applicant of a pattern of acts committed against members of the group, such as to lead to an inference from such pattern of the existence of a specific intent," end quote. In these submissions, I show that Israel's genocidal acts against Palestinians in Rafah form part of a continuing, escalating pattern of conduct across Gaza that provides persuasive and consistent evidence of Israel's genocidal conduct. In light of these new facts, South Africa seeks an order from the court, the only order that will clearly protect what is left of Palestinian life in Gaza. It seeks an explicit order that Israel cease its military activities, not only in Rafah, but throughout Gaza. Turning then to the Israel cease its military activities, not only in Rafah, but throughout Gaza. Turning then to the genocidal acts. In my remaining time before you, I will highlight the following features of the genocidal campaign by Israel. First, Israel has continued to kill Palestinians in Gaza, including women and children, at an alarming rate. Second, as a result of Israel's onslaught, Palestinians in Gaza are facing what the Undersecretary General of the UN has described as the worst humanitarian crisis he has seen for more than 50 years. Third, Israel's systematic targeting and bombardment of hospitals and medical facilities and its throttling of humanitarian aid has pushed Gaza's medical system to collapse. Fourth, Israel's direct attack and siege of Gaza's biggest hospitals has led to the uncovering of mass graves, evidencing Israeli massacres of Palestinians seeking shelter and medical treatment. Finally, most recently, Israel has intensified its attacks in the north while pressing on with its Rafah offensive, leaving displaced Palestinians nowhere safe to go. I will take these in turn. The first feature of the genocidal conduct, killing. Since South Africa appeared before the court on 11 January 2024, at least 11,500 Palestinians have been directly killed by Israel. The majority of these casualties are women and children, in an enclave where nearly 50% of the population are children. This onslaught has occurred despite the binding orders issued by this court and the binding Security Council resolution on 25 March 2024, demanding an immediate ceasefire for the month of Ramadan. In fact, as UNICEF pointed out, a double-digit number of children were killed within hours of that resolution. 2 mothers and 4 children are killed every hour. UNRWA head Philippe Lazzarini says, "There are no words left that can do any justice to the people of Gaza. The numbers of dead and injured defy comprehension. At least 35,000 Palestinians killed and 79,000 injured, with 10,000 more reportedly missing or under the rubble. Up to 1.7 million displaced, most multiple times, and more than 70% of all housing stock in Gaza, and more than 80% in parts of northern region damaged or destroyed." The second feature is a humanitarian catastrophe. Israel's coordinated plan in Gaza has resulted in a humanitarian crisis, the crisis that this court warned about in January, February, and in March. What Palestinians in Gaza face has been described as, quote, apocalyptic levels of pain and injustice, given that food and other vital aid cannot get in and people, including the chronically sick and injured, cannot get out, end quote. These apocalyptic conditions look set to worsen, with Israel's ongoing attacks on the north, middle, and south, with full-blown famine in the north, moving its way south, and where Israel's blockade on food, fuel, and medical supplies continue. Gaza's children have suffered particularly severely. More than 14,000 have been killed. Thousands more have been injured or lost family members. While an estimated 17,000 children are unaccompanied or separated. Nearly all of Gaza's children have been exposed to traumatic experiences, the consequences of which will last a lifetime. Make no mistake, these conditions are a direct result of Israel's military onslaught on the besieged enclave, with full knowledge of the destructive consequences of this humanitarian crisis. In these circumstances, the thwarting of humanitarian aid cannot be seen as anything but the deliberate snuffing out of Palestinian lives. Starvation to the point of famine, obstructing aid in the face of famine, and killing of at least 200 aid workers. For the court's previous orders to be effective, for the provision of humanitarian aid urgently and at scale, Israel has to be ordered to stop its military offensive. The third feature of genocidal conduct relates to the crippling of Gaza's medical system. Israel's offensive on Rafah has further reduced access to health care in an already decimated health system. Only 2 out of 36 hospitals are located within the so-called humanitarian area designated by Israel. In just 6 days, between 6 and 12 May, Médecins Sans Frontières recorded that it was forced to suspend its life-sustaining activities at Al-Shabura Clinic, hand over its activities at Al-Emirati Hospital, and was forced to close its activities in Rafah Indonesian Field Hospital, as it could not guarantee the security and safety of patients and staff with the ongoing offensive. The assault on healthcare within Rafah is the culmination of a pattern of attacks on healthcare services in Gaza, through which the main hospitals across Gaza have completely stopped functioning. After Israel's military assault, after Israel's military seized the Rafah and Kerem Shalom crossings last week and prohibited the importation of life-giving fuel to hospitals on 13 May, the European Gaza hospital completely ran out of fuel and experienced a total blackout. Without fuel, hospitals cannot sustain incubators, respirators, and life-saving machinery. Healthcare in Gaza is crippled by shortages of food, fuel, oxygen, medicines, and anesthetics. The obstetric and maternity health system in Gaza is virtually non-existent, and every functioning medical facility is overwhelmed with patients. Babies continue to die of malnutrition and starvation. Nor is there any escape. Medical evacuations are impossible. Israel has control of all entry and exit points into and out of Gaza, trapping an already suffering population and inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about Palestinians' physical and biological destruction in clear violation of Article 2C of the Genocide Convention. The fourth feature of genocidal conduct is the discovery of mass graves. In its targeted attack on hospitals, Israel has killed hundreds of civilians, including doctors and medical staff, turning centers built for healing into mass graves full of the decomposing bodies of men, women, and children. On 10 April, a UN inspection team reported that Khan Yunis was reduced to rubble and dirt, and returnees discovered ghastly scenes of unearthed mass graves containing the massacred bodies of the elderly, women, children, and men at Al-Nasser Hospital. Blue scrubs reportedly still clothed the dead bodies of medical staff. Many were decapitated. 324 decomposing bodies were discovered, many stripped and handcuffed. Of these, only 42 were identified. Another 30 bodies were discovered in 2 mass graves in Al-Shifa Hospital, with only 12 bodies identified, prompting the UN Secretary General to call for the immediate access of independent investigators. These bodies included women and children, with many reportedly showing signs of torture and summary executions. The recent discovery of multiple mass graves, Israel's ongoing chokehold on information coming out of Gaza, and complete refusal to allow independent investigators in, means that we will not know how many Palestinians have been killed by Israel's military campaign for some time, if at all, and only if the evidence is not obliterated by Israel's ongoing military operations in what Commissioner Volker Turk describes as the prevailing climate of impunity. It is for this reason that South Africa seeks an order requiring Israel to facilitate the unimpeded access into Gaza of fact-finding missions, officials, investigators, and journalists. The fifth feature of genocidal conduct relates to Israel's intensified attacks in the north. During the past week, while our eyes and attention were drawn to the horrific acts unfolding in Rafah, Israeli tanks rolled again into northern Gaza, an area that Israel reported that it had cleared many months ago. On 11 May, Israel issued evacuation orders over 22 neighborhoods in Jabalia in northern Gaza. At least 100,000 people in the north have been forced to flee their devastated homes. That same day of the evacuation orders, Israel began a relentless assault on northern Gaza, killing Palestinian families in their homes and children near the Toba Mosque within the Jabalia refugee camp. Journalists report that they have no idea about the number of people killed in North Gaza for the past day, as medics are unable to move due to the heavy bombing. Many people are still trapped under the rubble, waiting for rescue, but no one is able to move under the rains of bombs. As I stand before you, Mr. President, it continues. On 14 and 15 May, just yesterday, and the day before yesterday, the Israeli military issued 2 new sets of evacuation orders for all or part of 19 neighborhoods in northern Gaza, displacing even more Palestinians in search of safety. Mr. President, these are the credible facts. Israel will no doubt once again deny and cast aspersions on the information presented by South Africa and provided by the UN and other international actors, including those this court itself has relied on. It will do so while continuing to systematically attack all independent sources of information about what is taking place in Gaza and refuse international investigators and journalists entry into Gaza. Having denied access to Gaza and attempted to discredit all other sources of information, Israel is then free to portray a picture of Gaza radically at odds with all other accounts. Just yesterday, the Prime Minister's office proclaimed that, quote, "The humanitarian catastrophe that has been spoken of has not been realized, nor will it," end quote. A bold denial of the findings of UN experts and other independent agencies, such as the IPC. As this court pointed out, the IPC is a global partnership of organizations, including, amongst others, the World Food Programme, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, and the World Health Organization. Ultimately, Israel says only what suits them, only if and when it suits them, notwithstanding the facts on the ground that have been presented here today. Despite the court providing Israel with an opportunity to respond to South Africa's current request, Israel has failed to submit a response. In conclusion, Mr. President, members of the court, the risks to the people of Gaza are imminent, irreparable, and rapidly increasing. This risk gives rise to the necessity for the remedy that we seek in this application, a remedy that will end Israel's genocidal campaign against Palestinians in Gaza. All of what I have described must stop. Israel must be stopped. South Africa is before you again today to respectfully ask the court to invoke its powers under Article 75(2) of the Rules of the Court to order a remedy that will stop Israel. Mr. President, that concludes my submissions on the genocidal conduct. I thank you for your patient attention.